This changes everything for the Pittsburgh Penguins as a superstar winger is being linked to the Penguins. He played on a line with Sidney Crosby briefly in the Four Nations faceoff, scored an overtime game-winning goal for Team Canada that was assisted by Sidney Crosby, and that got me thinking, is that a sign of things to come in Pittsburgh? The combination of Sidney Crosby and Mitch Marner to give Crosby and the boys one last chance at a run. Marner is that dynamic of a player and could be a perfect fit for the Penguins because of his relationship with Kyle Dubas and because of the obvious chemistry between him and Sidney Crosby. So many reasons why Mitch Marner should come to the team that has a ton of money to offer him. But before we get into why and how Mitch Marner could become a Pittsburgh Penguin, you guys need to subscribe to the channel. Penguins Digest. 71% of you have not yet subscribed to the channel, and that's a fine number and all. Evgeni Malkin, shout out him, 71. But guys, I need that number to be a heck of a lot lower than that. 71% of you watching the videos not subscribing to the channel. Come on now. If you want the latest Pittsburgh Penguins news, rumors, updates, and analysis, it's going to happen here on Penguins Digest. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. And let's get into the meat of the video today because it's a fun one. We get to talk hypotheticals, which means we get to talk Mitch Marner, who's going to be a free agent this offseason. Marner's contract with the Maple Leafs is nearing the end of the road. The Penguins have a ton of cap space. This article says $22 million. I've read $26 million cap space for the Pittsburgh Penguins entering this offseason, which means they can afford to spend $10+ million on a player, on a superstar to pair with Sidney Crosby, and his name is Mitch Marner. His future is one of the hottest topics in the NHL right now, and obviously Maple Leafs fans and a bunch of other hockey fans want him to stay with the Maple Leafs, but the Penguins and other teams could rival the Leafs and try to bring in a player like Marner. Sidney Crosby trying to go for one last run at the Stanley Cup, and if he's going to do that, a Marner-Crosby duo seems to be a logical answer to the Penguins getting back into contention. NHL analyst and former Penguin as well as former Leaf Colby Armstrong was talking about it during the last Penguins game on TNT, talking about the potential of Mitch Marner coming to Pittsburgh and his connections with Kyle Dubas, plus the availability of all this cap space for the Penguins, are reasons why the Penguins should pursue Mitchell Marner. And Marner's future being in question immediately raises eyebrows, immediately hints at the fact that the Penguins have all this money to spend and they could splurge on a guy like Marner to help accelerate this rebuild. You can't just rely on draft picks. You have to get players, NHL-level players, on this roster, because it would show that, hey, we're still trying to compete instead of just trying to foster all this young talent, trying to develop all these young players. Marner would help accelerate that process by making people around him better, and that's one of the main reasons why I like the idea of bringing in a guy like Marner. He could score goals, but he's mostly a playmaker. He's a facilitator. He's a guy that's going to set up everybody else, make everybody around him better, and elevate his teammates. And that's the type of guy you want. That's what Sidney Crosby's always been. That's what Mitch Marner's always been. Get him in Pittsburgh. He's more of a playmaker than anything else. I think it'd be a great fit for the Pens. He had a $60 or $65 million contract previously, but these extension talks with the Toronto Maple Leafs have pretty much come to a halt, and we don't know what Marner's next team is going to be, but the fact that he's being linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins is good news for us. Rumors continue to swirl around Mitch Marner, and the eyes will continue to be on him until free agency, until July 1st, with over $22 million in cap space. As the same article, the Penguins are expected to be aggressive this offseason. Kyle Dubas, former GM of Marner in Toronto, could use that connection to entice him to Pittsburgh, as well as playing alongside Sidney Crosby. That would be an offensive force. It's mainly because of Colby Armstrong that this is circulating right now. Penguins with $26 million in cap space means that they can afford a guy like Marner, and there's not a ton of teams that could say that they can afford Mitch Marner right now. So Armdog is thinking Marner could fit right in because of the Crosby connection, because of the Dubas connection, and because of the money, because that's what matters at the end of the day. Mitch Marner could be the next face of the Pittsburgh Penguins. We were talking about this last offseason, that Mitch Marner, when he hits free agency, could be a Penguins. We were talking about a trade potentially this past season. I mean, Mitch Marner to Pittsburgh just makes too much sense, guys. And that is why this is something we're going to be talking about for months to come until July 1st. This is going to be something that's realistic for the Pittsburgh Penguins to bring in this hot ticket, this big name free agent, arguably the biggest name on the market come July 1st in Mitch Marner. And I really do think that would help turn things around for these Penguins. We're trying to be a contender. We're trying to be a playoff team before Sidney Crosby hangs up the skates. And you see down at the bottom of this article that the chemistry that was obviously on display between Crosby and Marner in the Four Nations faceoff is only continuing to add fuel to the fire when talking about Crosby and Marner being reunited in Pittsburgh, and it would be a long-term investment for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Acquiring Marner would not just signify presence, it could provide the potential for the franchise. Sidney Crosby actively playing. Penguins need to give him a little bit of help, and Mitch Marner is one of the best line mates you could ever give. Sidney Crosby, if he is slotted into that line, oh my. And then when Crosby retires, guess what? Mitch Marner can help keep this team competitive, keep this team alive and well following the departure of Sidney Crosby. And it's because he's that good of a player. He's an electric type of player. Mitch Marner, one of my favorite guys to watch in the entire league. The future of Mitch Marner being unpredictable, being so many openings, so many possibilities for this guy. Of course, we have to mention the Pittsburgh Penguins because of the money, because of the connections. This is a realistic possibility. And if he doesn't sign an extension by July 1st, I think he could be in black and gold next year. Colby Armstrong, as we talked about already, has linked them together. And Colby knows, hey, this is too good of an opportunity for the Penguins to pass up. Pairing Mitch Marner with a future Hall of Famer, Sidney Crosby, would be something special just because of what we've already seen between these two together. I mean, Marner could actually learn some things from Sidney Crosby and become more of a leader. He's already an alternate captain for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he could be the next guy in Pittsburgh. You know, him and Brian Rust can help carry the torch whenever all these players start to retire. Crosby, Gino, Letang. Brian Rust is going to be the man, you know, after everything is all said and done. And Mitch Marner could be that other guy. You know, we could have two dynamic wingers to help usher in this next generation of Pittsburgh Penguins. And this was on NHL and TNT. Colby brought up a great point that the Penguins have a ton of money along with having all of these draft picks. And the fact that Kyle Dubas is trying to compete now and not just, you know, hold on to all these draft picks and draft a bunch of young players, you got to find somebody out there now in free agency that can be that dynamic playmaker, that can be your stud, your superstar player to help these younger players. You can't just put a whole bunch of younger players out there and expect to have a competitive team. You need an alpha. You need a superstar. Mitch Marner could be that superstar for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And honestly, he's such a perfect fit. I love his playmaking ability. Again, I talked about it earlier, how he makes guys around him better, but it's his selflessness. It's really his selflessness that makes him a great leader. And I think he would be a good guy for this culture that we've established in Pittsburgh, this Penguins hockey. What does Penguins hockey mean? Well, it means guys like Mitch Marner, and I really do like the idea of bringing him in. A lot of attention on him at the trade deadline. Carolina reportedly made a trade offer to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They wanted to give them Mikko Rantanen, and in return, Toronto would give them a package including Mitch Marner. And Mitch Marner turned that down. Mitch Marner said, no, I don't want to play for Carolina. He's got bigger plans. Mitch Marner already has his sights set on his future, and he knows, hey, the Penguins could be a perfect fit for me. And, you know, since that trade offer happened, reportedly, Marner has not commented on his future. He's declined to discuss his future in Toronto. So I think he has lost respect for the organization, just as they've lost respect for him, because they were willing to trade him away. And so Mitch Marner's reputation is so tattered with the Toronto Maple Leafs that he needs a fresh start. And Pittsburgh would be a great place for that, because you are going to be the guy. You're going to be the guy in the spotlight. You're going to be the number one. You're going to be the alpha as soon as Sidney Crosby hangs him up. And until then, you get to play with one of the greatest players ever. So the fourth period's David Pagnotta talked about this as well on a podcast, talked about Marner expected to test free agency. The amount of money that he's going to ask for means that there's already a limited number of teams that could pursue him. You're talking Chicago, Utah, LA, Calgary, Philly, San Jose, New York, Islanders, and Pittsburgh are teams expected to pursue him. And a lot of those teams, why would he ever want to go to those teams? His relationship with Crosby, his relationship with Dubas, the city of Pittsburgh. These are all selling points for Mitch Marner. Look at the future. Look at what this team's going to be in like 3 years. Mitch Marner will only be 30 years old in 3 years. So he can be that still superstar level player for years to come and help this Penguins team still be competitive as they continue to get through this rebuild process and get back to being a playoff team. So I really do think Marner, that connection with Pittsburgh, their interest in Marner for the last few years, pairing him with Crosby, I can't picture it any better than this, guys. I mean, this is almost like a perfect storm for the Penguins that they have this money at the perfect time, because Mitch Marner, there's not usually free agents of this caliber out there. And the fact that he's out there, the Penguins could swoop in and take him. And then we hear from Kyle Dubas. Kyle Dubas said, I think I've always come in and said there's no ambition on my end to have this take any longer than it needs to take, both for the city and the people that have put a lot in to keep the Penguins at this level for a long time. And it's not even just the players. It's a staff that's been around for a long time. There's a certain level, and when the level drops off, you don't want the standards of the core ideology to erode. So that's what we work towards each day. And then Marner got talked to about this as well. He said, I wasn't focused on it. I had a feeling that maybe something might happen. But yeah, I'm here to play hockey with this team. And like I said, I'm focused with this team, and that's what I can tell you. Like I talked to you guys, man, I'm not going to get into any of this contract stuff. I've been very grateful. I've loved my time being a Leaf, so I'll just leave it with you guys. And Marner recorded 21 goals, 58 assists, 79 points already this season. Continue to add to that. You talk about his future with the Toronto Maple Leafs, very much in question. You know, we talked about how he was almost traded to Carolina. He was unwilling to waive his no movement clause to go to Carolina. He has other destinations in mind for places that he would like to play the rest of his career. Maple Leafs current general manager addressed this in an impromptu press conference, but it didn't stop the media from continuing to project potential landing spots for the 27-year-old Mitch Marner. And based on these reports, you know, we don't think he's going to stay in Toronto. He's going to be a free agent come July 1st. That's where all the signs are pointing right now. And, you know, with what Colby Armstrong said, with what other people have said, David Pagnotta has said, the Leafs have Dubas to thank for putting them in the mess that they're in right now. You know, we talk about Mitch Marner, the difficulty of the situation, and why Mitch Marner is unhappy currently, even though he's not alluding to that right now. There has been, you know, talk of that in the past and why he just wants a fresh start somewhere else. So with 19 games left in the regular season, Marner showing that he can perform, but also playing in the playoffs. There's been a lot of criticism of Mitch Marner in the playoffs, being a ghost per se in the playoffs, and that could obviously affect his market value when free agency hits, because the teams are going to be looking at Marner are teams that are looking at the playoff spot. So they need a guy that's going to be good enough in the playoffs, and he could be one of the highest paid players in NHL history, especially wingers in NHL history, if he can prove that he can perform in the playoffs. That's a big question mark, a big ask of Mitchell Marner. So let's do a little bit of a recap here. By the numbers, Marner has 21 goals, 58 assists, 79 points this season, which are very impressive numbers. Continue to add to that. The Penguins have $26 million in salary cap space this offseason, and they continue to add to that. And then state of play, the Penguins likely to miss the playoffs this season, but they are fueling urgency for roster improvement. Their core, including Crosby and Malkin, is committed for next season, creating a platform for a competitive rebuild. What's next? If Marner enters free agency, expect a bidding war with the Penguins. Have these resources available to them where they could go and get this guy. They could be front runners for this guy. Additionally, with the commitment to winning during Crosby's tenure, they may want to prioritize securing up a top talent like Mitch Marner this offseason. So the bottom line, Penguins are at a critical juncture, aiming to bounce back and compete while leveraging their financial flexibility. Marner's potential could not only elevate the Penguins and their performance, but also reshape the franchise's future as they continue to transition to a post-Sidney Crosby era. And that is the most important part, is ushering in that next generation of next wave of talent. And Mitch Marner could be the guy in Pittsburgh if he signs this contract with the Penguins this offseason. So continue to keep an eye on that. We'll continue to keep an eye on that and update you guys. But this is new news about Mitch Marner. It's continuing to creep into the news in hockey now that the trade deadline's over. We're looking towards free agency, and Mitch Marner has been linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will see you on the next episode.